So I'm not sure if I talked about this production of cerebrospinal fluid. I know when we did ventricles, I'm not sure whether I said I was going to save it or not, so I'll do it again just in case. So we have our brain ventricles, lateral, third, fourth brain ventricles. We know that they have an epithelial lining called ependyma. If you remember from Unit 2 when we talked about membranes, we said that epithelial tissue typically has what underneath it? What kind of tissue? If you remember, normally we have connective tissue deep to epithelial tissue. And within connective tissue, you typically find blood vessels. So if I was going to draw my ependymal or ependymal lining, we'll say that these are ependyma cells. I'm not sure if they're actually cuboidal or not. I'm just drawing them like that. Okay, so underneath I have some dense irregular connective tissue. Or connective tissue. I'm not sure if it's dense irregular. That's typically the most common, but I'm not positive it is. And then we have some blood vessels underneath. Okay, so what does all of this have to do with the epithalamus? Because remember, we're talking about the epithalamus. So the epithalamus, and I'm going to get rid of these brain ventricles and put up the epithalamus instead. Thalamus, hypothalamus, epithalamus, pineal gland. So the epithalamus is going to send a signal down here to these blood vessels that are in the walls of these, the walls of the ventricle. So deep to this ependymal layer, we have these blood vessels. And they're called the choroid plexus. So they're a network of capillaries that are deep to our epithelial layer called the ependyma. Remember, this is ependyma, and these are CNS glial cells. We talked about microglia. So these are supportive cells that play a role in the CNS. So what happens? The epithalamus sends a signal to the choroid plexus telling it to dilate. So if you've watched these videos before, you know that when we dilate a blood vessel, we make it more permeable to fluid. So I can come in here and draw some slits. And that fluid that's in the blood vessel, that plasma, can then leak out. And then it's going to cross this layer of ependymal cells. So as the fluid crosses through that layer of ependymal cells into the lumen of the ventricle, so I had that ventricle like this. So if I had my ependymal layer and I have this choroid plexus up here dilating, as my fluid goes from this choroid plexus into the lumen of the ventricle by passing through this ependymal layer, it gets converted into cerebrospinal fluid. So epithalamus, and I'll write some steps out. Epithalamus sends a signal to the choroid plexus. This choroid plexus is going to dilate, and then the fluid moves through the ependymal layer. And it's now called cerebrospinal fluid. And then it can move through those interventricular foramen to get down to the third ventricle, can move through the cerebral aqueduct to get into the fourth ventricle, and then move through those median and lateral apertures to get around the brain. Okay, sweet. So that's the epithalamus. Big thing is playing that role in cerebrospinal fluid, CSF, and then talking about this pineal gland. All right, next structure.